on the last picture of the Hawkins, and it's a perfect picture because it's your father's entire family. And I can tell by my age, I'm sitting on Grandma's lap, that it was probably taken about 1958. And everybody looks to be in really good humor. Is there a story behind that?
Well, yes. Most, as you notice, the adults are all laughing, and the children are. Many of the children are crying. Well, it so happened when the photographer came to take this picture, he wanted everybody, each family, together. And our little Denise she found a place to sit. She was about 2, and she found a place to sit, and that's where she was ready to have her picture taken. And so when the photographer wanted each family together, Randy, Bert's oldest son, was trying to be helpful. He saw Denise was in one end of the group, and Jean and I and the rest were on the other, so he thought he would pick Denise up and move her down with our family. Well, that didn't set well with Denise because she had found her place and she didn't want to be moved. So she started crying. Well, standing next to her was Althea's little girl, Cindy. And Cindy felt very sorry for Denise crying. So she went up to pat her and to ease her and console her. And Denise, having 2 older sisters and a brother, thought she was going to teasing her or making fun of her. So Denise reached out and tweaked Cindy's nose. Then Cindy started crying because that felt bad, you know. And then one by one, the smaller children, in sympathy with Cindy and Denise, and started crying too. Just kind of a domino effect, and it just tickled all the adults. And the adults were laughing and the children were crying. Well, we finally got settled down, but that's the picture. The photographer thought that's a good little time to take the picture, and it did. And the whole family's there. On the end, on the right, is Aunt Bertha. Well, she was just part of our family because Uncle Jim and Aunt Bertha went to Ravendale with us, and they followed us back to Ontario.
They were very close.
So that was. But with this beautiful family that I am so proud of, my family and my siblings and offspring, we were a good family, and it didn't happen by accident. The gentlemen and parents that were our parents were the basis of this family and why we're such good people. I don't know of any person that has committed a crime or done anything bad, and it was through, I think, my dad's raising us and setting out examples for how to guide our lives in life. Now, he had certain things. Now, he had many bumps in the road along the way, as I had mentioned earlier in the book. But he had several things that were just his sayings that helped him through the hard times, and that he found to be helpful in raising his children with the same things. And we've just written down a few of the things that Carol thought was called, she called them Archie-isms.
No, I call them Dolly-isms.
Well, then they went from my dad to me, and then to you, and I noticed some of my other siblings were using them in raising their children first. I picked out a few that I thought were quite important that Dad used in raising us. And the first one, you know, he was trying to teach us in life and how to direct our life. And the first one was hitch your wagon to a star. I mean, don't be settled for something
easy.
Something easy, and put your star up there and head for it. And then, so in doing that, you might, oh, it's too hard for me. And then he said, to think you are able is almost to be so. You have to believe in yourself that you are able to do that and keep going on it. And another one he said is 3 little words. If at first you don't succeed, just try again,
That's
and
one
you'll
that
get through.
through my head all
And
the time.
well, my dad gave me a little plaque that has on it, and it's stuck with me too. So in choosing our life's work, or what we wanted to be, he said, in doing all that, you work hard for a long time to build up a good reputation that Dad has guided us through, to have a good reputation, not to stream off into some other direction. But he said, it takes a lifetime to build up that good reputation, but you do something wrong, and down it comes, in just a few minutes to tear it down.
I remember that one too.
So we all, I think we can all learn by some of those things.
And wasn't there the very last one? The
Well,
one
we're
about-
not there.
Oh, I'm sorry.
We're on number 4, that in choosing what we wanted to do, he said you can do almost anything if you want to, bad enough.
Okay. So
And so then there was there was a, one that kind of is indelible, and I think most of us. But he said he wouldn't give a plug nickel for anyone who didn't have a temper. He was talking about temper, keeping your temper to down so that you can control it. So the ism is, I wouldn't give a plug nickel for someone who didn't have a temper. But he also wouldn't give a nickel for anyone who couldn't control it. So if you have a temper, that's good, but learn to control it so it doesn't ruin your life and you do something wrong. So then,
isn't there a story about Uncle Bert?
yes, in that temper business, Bert one time was late getting, the rest of the family was sitting down for dinner in Ontario when we were growing up, and Bert was a teenager. And he was late getting in for dinner, and so when he did come, it was, well, I'll back up a little, it was his job to keep the water bucket filled. We did not have running water, and he'd have to go out to the pump and pump fresh water to use in the house. That was before running water at our house. And so when Bert came in a little late for dinner, he was hungry and wanted to sit down at the table, and Dad said, well, Bert, your water bucket's empty. And so Bert was so hungry and everybody else was eating, so he grabbed the bucket and started out the door. And my dad said, and be sure to slam the door as you go out. And Bert shut it very quietly. But that is Bert keeping that temper. He was very angry because he couldn't sit down with the rest of the family and eat.
So it was your dad, in a subtle way, reminding him of how to live his life.
Keep his temper,
Yeah.
in other words.
And the one that has to do with there's a link between one of them and the poems. that he used to-
Well, yes, the last one that we had decided was kind of important right here. It said, to be good is not enough. Be good for something. When you choose your goal in life, be sure it's worthwhile. Not just for yourself, but for others too. And not just serve yourself, but you want to help your fellow man along the way. And so that was one of the poems that was one of Dad's favorites in that respect, to help your fellow man. It's called Building a Bridge for Him. And it says, an old man going along a lone highway came to the evening cold and gray, to a chasm vast and deep and wide, through which was flowing a sullen tide. The old man crossed in the twilight dim. The sullen stream had no fear for him, but he turned when safe on the other side and built a bridge to stem the tide. Old man, said a fellow pilgrim near, you are racing your drink by building here. Your journey will be with the ending day. You never again will pass this way. You've crossed the chasm deep and wide. Why build this bridge at this even tide? The builder lifted his old gray head and said, "Good fellow, in the path I had come," he said, "there followeth after me today a youth whose feet may pass this way. This chasm that has been not for me, to that fair-haired may a pitfall be. He too must cross in the twilight dim. Good friend, I'm building this bridge for him." And that's to make good for your fellow man, to help your fellow man along. And I notice in many schools today, they have to do community work for part of their career. And I think that's very good. We didn't have to do that in school. We depended on my dad to help us through. And another one that was, it's my favorite of some of Dad's poetry too, and it was called "If" by Rudyard Kipling. If I can get this separated here. It's a guide. Rudyard Kipling's is a guiding principle to guide our lives. And I can remember my dad quoting many times parts of this poem, and I would enjoy it, appreciate it if all the rest of you would read that poem. I have given it to many of my grandchildren in a graduation card. They had, at that time, they had some of the Kipling's "If" for girls. And so I think Aaron was one that received that. I can't remember the other one, but either girls or boys, this Kipling is a good guideline for life.
Now, one of the things that I remember so well is you telling the story about Grandpa coming to your house when you were young and you had a typewriter. I don't think you were even married to Dad yet.
We were living up at 1195 during that time, and you were just a little girl. And one day he sat down while I was busy doing things in the house, and I had a typewriter there because I was going to college at the time. And he picked up the typewriter and sat in a comfortable chair and began typing. I just thought he was playing around. But what he was doing was typing some of the poems that helped him along, just as he remembered.
From his heart.
From his heart. And these were poems that he truly believed in and that helped him over many bumps in the road and life's held out.
Many challenges.
Many challenges to him. But yes, so those are some of those were we put at the bottom, typed by Archie Hawkins, and that's his typing on those poems were there. And he's, wonderful person to guide our whole family, not just his siblings, my siblings, but the whole Hawkins family, Hawkins Wolf family too.
My guess is that those Archieisms are going to go, they're going to follow Colleen's kids, Aaron's kids, everybody. I don't
Jean's
think those
kids,
will ever, they'll never die, so.
I hope so. It's a good guide for living.
And what a perfect way to end the section on the Hawkins family.
Yes, I felt so too. And the photographer, not only did he want us all in one group, but there was Doug and Janice Reese, Aunt Joy's oldest boy, and his wife, could not be there for that picture. So my dad asked the photographer if he could put in a picture of Doug and Janice so that they would be included because they were part of our family. And he did, and you can't tell that it's been an insert in there.
1958 high tech.
Right, it was.
Well, we'll stop with the Hawkins family and move on to the Douglas. Thank you, Mom, for the great memories.
Well, thank you for helping.